And almost ready. We are ready.
Right. Welcome to the February 5th, 2024 meeting of the Transportation Committee. My name is Jason Promowitz and I am the chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez and Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. The meeting is called to order at 7:03 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all community board members who are not able to attend in person to have their cameras on and their first and last name displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, please raise your hand via Zoom if you have any questions. It's a little bit of a different procedure than normally for our committee meetings. Just want to call that out. Members of the public, if you are here in person, you can raise your hand. And if there's time following committee discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take minutes, if anybody would like to do so.
We can take minutes.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Okay. Committee members, I will call your name. Your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Pete Isman.
Present.
Brock Friedman.
Present.
Jason Fromowitz.
Present.
Matt Roberts.
Present.
Larry Shire.
Present.
Gabe Terzo.
Present.
Jerry Weinstein.
Present.
Hyder Zaidi. I do not see, but we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Brendan. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to the adoption of the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from January 3rd meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes from January 3rd meeting are adopted and will soon be available on the CB6 website. All right, in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe some ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public who are watching at home understand what is being said by each committee member. The chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for communicating business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Tonight's agenda. We will start with a presentation from the Taxi and Limousine Commission on their work and initiatives. I believe we have representatives attending from Zoom.
Yes, we do.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for letting us come to present tonight. I'm Dylan Cepeda. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Community Affairs, and we also have Audra Palacio, who's the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Community Affairs on, and David Renz, a Policy Analyst from the Office of Community Affairs. So I'm going to share my screen with the presentation for tonight. And David Renz is going to start off the presentation. So let me just. All right. So David.
Yep, thank you, Dylan. So again, as Dylan said, my name is David Renz. I'm a policy analyst with the TLC, and I'm just going to quickly, go over some of the work that the TLC does. If you can go on to the next slide, Dylan. Of course, the TLC, we were founded in 1971. A little bit over 50 years now we've been around, and we, of course, license and regulate the yellow cabs and green cabs, as well as for-hire vehicles, which includes community-based liveries, black cars, and luxury limousines. I'll go into a little bit more detail of those later on. Commuter vans and paratransit vehicles. And you can go on to the next slide, Dylan. And you can, so yeah, I'm going to quickly go over the different types of vehicle licenses that we have. Maybe we can go on to the next. So of course we have the yellow taxis. They are the iconic yellow cabs. They run off a medallion, and they are the only vehicles that are licensed to take street hails anywhere in the 5 boroughs, anywhere within the 5 boroughs. As we kind of modernize the taxis, the TLC does license several e-hail apps, which can help you get a yellow taxi. We're using Curb, Arrow, Mile. The good thing about the e-hail apps is if you do like the convenience of ordering a yellow cab on your phone, maybe some people don't like to use Uber and Lyft. You can use one of those apps, and you are given a upfront binding cost. So you kind of know what you're paying upfront as opposed to the traditional meter. Meters are still great. Some people do complain about surge pricing. We have heard that in the past. And the meter fare, what the meter is what it is. There's no surge pricing. It stays constant. Can move on to the next slide, Dylan. Of course, you have the green taxis. They service the outer boroughs. They're almost identical to yellow taxis. However, they are not allowed to pick up street hails below 96th Street on the east side and south of, 110th Street on the west side. Otherwise, they have the same e-hail apps available to them and run on the same metered rate as a yellow taxi. Okay, you can go on to the next slide, Dylan.
Yep. And just to note, there's the special pilot program street hail liveries. So they'll be black usually or white, and they'll have this green P on the side. So those act more like traditional black cars. So they can't pick up street hailing passengers if they have this P on them.
So just to clarify on that, are they hailed, or would you reach them by phone in that way?
Yeah, they were usually dispatched by local bases. I'm sorry to miss that. They are usually dispatched by local bases. They generally serve like the green cabs, traditional SHL green cabs. They service the outer borough, so they can be called by if they're affiliated with a local car base, you may get a car like that dispatched to you if you call your local car service company.
Thanks.
And next we have the traditional for-hire vehicles. So these also, a lot of them are generally registered to a local car company. They won't have that SHL P that we briefly talked about without getting too far into the weeds. These are their traditional local service cars that get dispatched to pick up passengers. And they, of course, also incorporate what is now Uber and Lyft. We would consider them for-hire vehicles or black cars. And they, of course, are the main smartphone apps I just mentioned, such as Uber and Lyft, to order them. And very important, they are only available on a prearranged basis. So no street hails, we call that unlicensed operations. And they can easily be identified by the T, the standard T plate. Easily identifiable. Some drivers you will see vanity plates, but all of them have, if you look, there's that T and LC. All of the plates have that. So just, you might see them out and about if you're really paying attention, some vanity plates, and you'll still see the T and LC be underneath it. Yeah, we could move on to the next slide, Dylan. Now There aren't too many licensed commuter vans left. Again, a lot of them service the outer boroughs, helping to bring people to transit locations. You can identify the licensed ones by their logos and markings on the side of the van. We also do regulate some paratransit vehicles, which, specialize in transporting certain passengers with disabilities. Of course, these make up a very small fraction of the licenses that we issue. Most of our licenses are the for-hire drivers and regular TLC licensed drivers. And then maybe we can move on to the next one. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dylan to go over some of the rights of passengers, as well as some other initiatives that we have.
Thanks, David. So at TLC, we believe everyone should be able to access rides. So we're working to increase our accessibility. One way we're doing that is through Accessible Dispatch, which is a program that we manage. You can request a wheelchair accessible vehicle to your location anywhere in the 5 boroughs. And you can do that through the Accessible Dispatch app. There's an online web portal. You can also make arrangements to get a wheelchair accessible vehicle at. You can call them by phone or 311. You could use any of the e-hail apps that we mentioned earlier for yellow and green cabs. And your FHV bases should be able to dispatch wheelchair accessible vehicles to you as well. So if there are any issues, things like you get refused a ride based on a protected class, or any of your rights are violated, such as the TLC driver's license is not on display when you get in the vehicle, the driver is driving recklessly, you can file a complaint to 311, and that gets assigned to our agency. If it violates a TLC rule, the licensee that's alleged to violate the rule gets a letter, and they can either plead guilty or they can defend themselves, and it goes to an oath hearing. It's important that if anyone makes a complaint, definitely try to leave as much information as possible in the complaint, including contact information, so that our agency investigators can get back to you if they have any questions or need any further information. And I mentioned before, service refusals are kind of a big focus that we want to shed light on, and we want to make sure that people are reporting them so that we can stop bad actors. These are just some of the categories that are covered under our service refusal rules. So you can't be denied based on your destination, race, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, immigration status, national origin, religion, creed, color, marital partner status, or pregnancy. And again, report that to 311, just like the previous consumer complaints. So there's by phone, app, or email, or web. There are a few situations where a driver can refuse to pick up a passenger, such as they've worked their entire shift and it's about to end. But it's better to report that to our agency, and we'll investigate whether that was true or not. And just some other common reports that our office gets in dealing with the public. For lost items, if you lose an item in a yellow or green taxi, you can call 311, and our agency will try to help you find and locate those items. If you lost an item in a for-hire vehicle, a black car, Uber, Lyft, things like that, you'll have to speak to that company directly, and they'll be able to assist you in looking for that item. But again, you want to provide as much information as possible, so that way we can locate the trip and try to find the driver to see if they still have that item, or if they maybe dropped it off at one of the NYPD precincts on the next slide. So these are the designated lost property precincts throughout the city. So some of your lost items may end up here. For this community board, probably the closest one is on the 17th precinct on 51st Street. But there's a few in each borough. And finally, some other items that get reported to us frequently are overcharges. So remember, it's important to take your receipt at the end of street hail trips in taxis. because that has important information to locate the ride. But if you ever feel like you've been overcharged, we get a lot of this, for instance, people at the airports and things like that. You can always report it to 311. 311 is the main portal for all complaints. And again, the agency is going to investigate that. And then if you lose your receipt but need a copy of it, you will have to email foil@tlc.nyc.gov. So that's how you would get an official receipt for a yellow or green cab trip. If it's from a base, again, you'll have to contact that base directly. So that's the end of the presentation. There's a few more frequently asked questions on our website if you want to take a look. But any member of the board or the public can always contact our office, the Office of Community Affairs at communityaffairs@tlc.nyc.gov for any information or questions or follow-up on anything taxi related.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have, yeah, first I want to recognize the committee and then I'll be happy to recognize questions from the public. Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, I have two questions. The first, could you go into more detail, clarify the difference between the amount that I would be paying if I get a yellow taxi by using my phone to contact the taxi through Curb, which I understand is a predetermined price, and if I hail the taxi and the meter rang?
Yeah, I can answer that, Dylan. So I would say the main difference is, so when Curb gives you the upfront rate is based off of the meter. So it is kind of accurate, but I would say it can differ where the meter does run on time. Time is a factor. So it's possible you could pay more. It's possible that you could pay less. I don't know if that kind of answers your question. I know, and that's to repeat myself, Curb is based off of the metered rates of the cab. However, it's not always going to be, right on. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, just because there are some variables when you're running just a straight meter, such as time, that the upfront price can't account for.
So do you have a sense of which is going to be higher generally?
It really can depend on when you order that trip too. So I guess right off the bat, I can't give you that sense. Like say for sure, Curb is always going to be higher than if you were to just say, you know what, I'm going to go out on the street corner, hail the cab, and run the meter, because there's a lot of variables at play.
Because the meter, I've seen the meter running after I've held the taxi through Curb. There's no way to switch over and take the price off the meter if it's lower.
That is correct. When you order a Curb, it is a binding fare. You are agreeing to pay the fare that you agree to when you order through Curb.
Okay, now on to my second question, which is very different. This is involving enforcement of rules where a licensed TLC operator has broken them. Now, I have called 311 and there have been hearings, and they've relied on my photographs and my testimony in order to follow through on whatever discipline is appropriate. In April, the city of the MTA bus cameras and also the lane-mounted cameras will broaden their coverage to include when vehicles are parked in bus stops, as well as stopped in bus lanes, blocking traffic, and bike lanes. And these enforcements, as I understand it, will result in somebody being mailed some sort of a summons. Have you set up a communication system where if one of your licensed people receives one of these summonses, you will be CC'd on it so that you can monitor what transpired before taking some further enforcement action.
So just to clarify, are you talking about specifically the bus lane cameras? Because as my colleague mentioned earlier, along with reporting say service refusals and overcharge fees, complaints like that are filed through 311. In fact, for a while now, our drivers were getting summonses for, I don't have exact numbers, but if a member of the public was to take a picture, kind of like you said, of a TLC licensed vehicle in a bike lane, parked illegally, we do issue summonses to them. They do get summonses from us. They get notified and have to attend an oath hearing. Did you have a different particular?
No, that's the only one that I'm aware of that ever gets enforced. My question is, since there are very few members of the public who will devote the time and the effort and follow-up to provide this kind of information, where this is available and readily available through automated camera enforcement, which is the new project. It doesn't sound like TLC is on board, and I really hope you get to it, because this will be very helpful.
Can I think I could clarify, Larry, are you asking on the bus camera, the
Yes.
bus mounted parking enforcement cameras? Is the question, will TLC be notified of?
Well, will they be
violations?
CC'd on a violation that's sent to a driver so that you can monitor what the what the adjudication is? And if there is an adjudication of a violation, then you should do something
Got
further.
it. Got it. So we can look into that and get back to you further. What I will say is with the red light camera tickets, we would get notified of that and we would issue additional summonses to drivers. So we do have communications with DOT as far as camera violations. To be fair, I don't know specifically on the new bus lane camera tickets, but there is, kind of precedent for that. Follow-up
And
enforcement.
our enforcement team is working really hard and diligently to enhance all of their efforts. So that is something that we are looking into.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking this is that there can be a duplication of effort, which is really needless in this case.
All right, thanks, Larry. Gabe, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you for the TLC for coming here tonight. My question is about the proposal to lift the number of ride shares in the city so long as they are EVs. I think I speak for most of the committee when I say I'm strongly opposed to this. It's a very bad idea. My question for you is this something that the TLC has advocated, or is this something simply top down from some city hall?
Yes, so that was part of our Green Rides initiative to electrify our fleet by 2030, the high volume fleet, so Ubers and Lyfts. But right now it's currently under litigation, so we can't say much about it.
And I would also add that currently, and there was never a cap on issuing the wheelchair accessible vehicles too. So we do, of course, are still going to constantly issue plates for vehicles that are ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to break down myself briefly. So I've also raised complaints to the TLC a handful of times, and I really commend the TLC. I think they're like one of the most, if not the most responsive agency in the city to complaints, and I've always appreciated that as a consumer. It brings me a philosophical question: is why is the TLC so great at addressing these complaints? I don't know if you want to opine on that, but I would love to see the same responsiveness from all city agencies, with maybe Community Board 6 being just behind it, that the TLC exhibits. Could you opine at all on why and how TLC is so effective at addressing complaints and concerns?
I also commend you. I compliment you on your the quality of your work.
We appreciate that feedback, and that's something that we rarely hear when we go to meetings, but we definitely really appreciate the feedback. We try. I mean, we try to respond to complaints at least, within 1 to 3 days. Sometimes it may take longer, but because we have to do a lot of research and within all the complaints, but we do try to respond immediately. And in addition to that, we've been working, and we're working every single day to try to make sure that our efforts with customer service, even with our enforcement team and prosecution team and our licensing team, we definitely try to see what we can do to enhance our customer service. So we're working, and we attend meetings like this meeting, which we appreciate, so we can get that feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question for me, and then I know we have some questions from the public. In terms of the complaints, what level of information about the complainant is shared with the party, the complainee? I don't know, I'm mixing up words. If I were to submit a complaint, what about me is shared with the person who I'm complaining about?
So yeah, we don't share anything, but when you go to the hearing, you'll have to, be on the record. So when you go to that hearing, the people, in like the oath court will see your name and know who you are.
Got it. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, I know we had questions from the public.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions and comments. I worked for 20 years for a special enforcement unit, so I know all about the plates and everything. How many black cars are there registered? Can you drive for hire, for Lyft or Uber without having a P&LC plate? Black cars can be.
Can we do one question at a time? Yeah, yeah. So what was the first question again?
How many black cars P&LC registered are there in the city? And can you drive for Uber and Lyft without having a P&LC plate?
Give me 1 minute on that. The second question I can answer right away. And it's, you are allowed to use those vehicles for personal use, but you cannot use the you can't use it for hire without a TLC driver's license.
Okay, they can have a driver's license. Do they have to have a plate?
Oh yes. You also need a TLC plate. It's a for hire vehicle license. You need both.
Because I see a lot of cars with Uber and Lyft on them with personal plates.
Can I ask where are you observing all these throughout the city?
Yes, and in the Bronx.
So there is a problem with unlicensed operations. They're always, it is a pervasive problem. One thing I will say is that it's possible they are coming from Nassau or New Jersey. In the Bronx, it's possible they are coming down from Westchester. Those drivers can do drop-offs. They can't pick up. So that is one thing to maybe keep in mind to explain some of the activity you might see. But we are aware of unlicensed operations, and our enforcement officers do diligent work trying to enforce our rules.
Okay, how many
to answer your other question, yes, there are about 100,000 licensed for hire vehicles.
Yeah, and that number is on open data, so anyone from the public can take a look.
And just to guess, it's 101,424 at one of the last counts we had.
I'm sorry, but let me one more question, just because there's a couple other people with questions. We've got a bunch to cover. Did you have one other thing you wanted to ask?
Yes, I find that one, vanity T&LC plates cover them up with their frames. Two, black cars have to be in one of three places. With a one passenger usually in the vehicle, driving with no passenger, but now I see a lot of them at the curb. And in my opinion, a lot of the congestion in the city is caused by the black cars.
So one thing I will say with that for the board is the TLC does have some utilization rules. Of course, nothing is perfect. It does have to tie into our driver pay standards, But we do have kind of rules in place to try to mitigate that, by trying to control how long drivers are driving around without a passenger.
And they idle, by the way, at the curb.
Thank you. Did we have other questions from the public? Michael, right?
Yes,
Go ahead, please.
I want to know what is being done to have more car credit that is be available to customers who do not have smartphones or do not have access to apps, so that they can request your power credit or rideshare.
So on the accessible dispatch initiative, we talked about, there is a number there to get wheelchair accessible taxis. Passengers, you don't have to be a user of a wheelchair to take advantage of a service like that. There are also ways to call your local car service company, and that is what I would advise to be the best alternative for passengers who may not be too tech savvy, to find what their local car service company is, and you can call them for reliable service.
Yeah, and all those bases are licensed, and there's a list on our website as well. So there's a few hundred. You can take a look.
I'm gonna recognize on Zoom, so a hand from Letty. I got it, brother. Letty, you should have,
Okay, Letty, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Letty going once, and we're gonna move on. Okay, let's leave her with access, and if you get it, we'll come back to you. And go ahead, please.
And if you could come closer to the front, because the Alice has a bit of a harder time picking up. Sorry about that.
No worries. I actually have an answer for Larry on Curb, which is when I've used Curb, it comes out like within 5%, but I believe there is a fee for like ordering Curb. So there's a base fee.
What's your personal preference?
I've never used Uber.
No, but on Curb, the hail or the reserve.
I don't take taxis very often. We can take it offline.
Okay.
My question for TLC, I'm just really curious about kind of the order of magnitude of complaints that you get in a year. If you want to break it, like just how many per category? You mentioned like denial of service, I think was, but like how many of those do you get in a year, and what are the other, big ones, and how many are those?
No, if we want exact numbers, we can look into getting back to you on that. But we do receive, of course, service refusals. Parking violations is another big one from what I've seen.
Order of magnitude. Like, I don't need exact numbers. I go, like, is it, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1 million?
Well, the TLC, we do get,
Back to you. Yeah.
we'd have to get back to you. I would say it's thousands of complaints, but if you want numbers on how many are issued, I don't know how far into the weeds you would like to get, but there are a lot of complaints that get received from the public. It varies on how much action we can take, because sometimes there's not a lot of information included, so that there's a lot of variables as far as what gets complained upon and what actually results in a summons.
Yeah, we would
Okay.
have to get back to you with a breakdown.
Letty, let's go back to you, and then I'd ask you to make it brief, please, and then we're gonna move on to our next topic.
No, it was a mistake.
Okay, very good, wonderful, all right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're going to move the agenda. Sorry
Can
for,
I ask one more?
I'm sorry, we've like a very busy meeting. I expect a lot of discussion in the next topic, so I don't want us to be here all night. I believe the TLC left us with their contact information. If you have further questions, please reach out to them after the meeting. Thank
Please
you.
reach out to us. We will answer. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And to reiterate,
Thank you.
community fairs at tlc.nyc.gov.
Correct.
Thank you.
you so much.
All right, next on the agenda, we have a discussion on the proposed toll rates for the Central Business District Tolling Program, also known as congestion pricing. I put some slides together to navigate this discussion. Brendan, can you pull those up, please?
Sure.
Next slide, please. Okay, so I have an agenda of how I would like this discussion to proceed. First, I'm going to cover what the scope of this conversation is. We're going to talk about what we are here to talk about tonight and what we are not here to talk about tonight. Then we're going to go into a quick overview and background on on congestion pricing as a whole. We have MTA here to field some questions. I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, make any comments that they would like. We also submitted from the committee some pre-submitted questions to them. We'll like to give them the opportunity to answer those then. Then we're going to go into the specific items of the tolling structure. I'm not going to read all of them, but they are there. There is a slide on each. I would like to review what is proposed in the tolling structure for each of those elements, and then we will have a discussion amongst committee members, and then we'll open up to comments from members of the public. In that section, I will ask that members of the public, if you would like to speak about particular elements of the tolling structure, please raise your hand either through Zoom with the raise hand button, or if you're in person, please raise your hand. We will be limiting comments up to 2 minutes and be setting a timer in order to move the meeting along efficiently. And we may or not be able to necessarily recognize everybody. We will do our best as time permits. And then we will conclude with a discussion on as a committee if there's any recommendations or next steps we would like to take on this proposal. Any comments, questions from the committee on that plan?
Just a sidebar, I'm very interested if we'll also kind of take a look back to the resolution from 2016.
It's in my
Okay.
my presentation.
I thought it would be.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next slide, please, Brendan. Okay, so what's in scope and out of scope? So tonight we are going to be discussing the tolling rates and structure for the congestion pricing proposal. We will not be discussing the overall merits of the tolling program. It is set law, it has been established. Tonight is not an opportunity to try to request a referendum on congestion pricing. We will not be discussing whether or not congestion pricing should be implemented or should not. We will only be discussing the tolling rates and structure. If your comments veer towards opposing the implementation of congestion pricing, we will be moving on to the next speaker. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start off with a overview of congestion pricing. All right, so some background. So congestion pricing was initially passed in 2019, and it established in a law that established congestion pricing program. The congestion pricing program. The benefits of this program are reducing congestion within the central business district, improving air quality within the region, and generating revenue to fund the $15 billion for MTA capital projects. That's the snippet of the law on the right. Next slide, please. So we'll talk a bit about the central business district. That is this area on the map there, the area including and below 60th Street. And then there's some carve outs for exceptions around the perimeter of the island and some of the entry points that are listed there. But effectively, we're talking about the core of the island below 60th Street and below. Next slide, please. And just to set the framework.
Brendan, just jump in here. We sent you a PowerPoint beforehand. We'd like for us to do that PowerPoint. Not have you do it, please. Can we go ahead? Slide, please. Thank you.
Let's. I just have like 2 more slides.
That's not what we agreed to. It's not what we agreed to. We did this in good favor. Let's please do this how we wanted to. That we agreed to beforehand.
What's the problem?
I don't understand.
Yeah,
And who's running the meeting?
We're just gonna continue with the agenda here. There's like 2 more slides on a brief overview and then an overview of where we've been in the past. And then I'm happy to turn it over to MTA. I do appreciate you being here, but it is our agenda to run. Thank you. Okay. So just a couple data points. We talked about commuters into the central business district. I sourced this from a previous MTA presentation. There are 1.5 million people who work in the central business district. 1.3 million people take transit into the central business district, and 143,000 people drive into the central business district, which represents 11% of the people who commute into the central business district. Next slide, please, Brendan. And then lastly, I want to call out that in a June 2022 study by the New York City Department of Planning, they found that 85% of households within Community District 6 are car-free, which means they do not have a car registered or associated with that residence. Next slide, please. And yes, so for some more background, we did pass a resolution in November 2016 in support of what was at the time the Move NY Fair Plan, which was a similar plan but had a bunch of differences to the congestion pricing law that was passed in 2019. But effectively, the committee took a position that the board took a position that we were in favor of implementing tolling in an effort to reduce traffic congestion. And that's been the latest official stance of the board on congestion pricing and congestion-based tolling. It's linked at the bottom if anybody wants to read up on it later. Next slide, please. I just want to call out here, so we're going to have fairly limited time today. There's a broad public comment period that the MTA has opened up on this proposal, on the tolling structure. So if your comments, if we don't get to your comments today, if you have additional comments to leave for the MTA, this information is how you would be able to provide your feedback to the MTA beyond our meeting today. Next slide, please. All right, so I'd like to hand over to the floor to the MTA, who I know we had on. Any comments or remarks you guys would like to make, and would love to have your responses to the questions we had submitted.
Yes, hi, my name is Julia Kite-Laidlaw. I'm the Senior Director for Strategy and Stakeholder Participation on the Central Business District Tolling Program over at MTA Bridges and Tunnels. And as I understand it, we were going to be giving a short presentation that I'd like to still give, just to kind of set up some of the fundamentals of the program. So if it's okay, I'd like to share my screen.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Wonderful, great. So again, my name is Julia Kite-Laidlaw. I'm from MTA Bridges and Tunnels, also known as the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, as you may have seen in the statute. And I'll just give a quick overview here. Some of the topics you have already covered just now, but we'll just reiterate it, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we can go into the questions that you submitted. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you for your support of the program. It's very important for us to hear from community boards located in the Central Business District, because you, more than anyone, I think, understand the scope, the challenge of congestion and how it's only worsened over the years, and how this program is intended to really benefit not only your district, but the entire region. So as you mentioned, yes, this was established by 2019 state law, the Traffic Mobility Act. And essentially what it says is that vehicles entering the Central Business District designated as 60th Street inclusive and below will be charged a toll for entering. And the CBD, as described on the graphic here, which we both share, excludes the FDR Drive, West Side Highway, and then those connections between the Hugh Carey Tunnel and those two roads as well. And what this law has, it's actually a very intricate bill, but it does put a lot of restrictions on how the program runs and where the revenue goes. And what's very crucial to understand is that 100% of the revenues after paying for the program itself are going to be invested in MTA capital projects. The law states that 80% of the revenues are lockboxed for New York City Transit, which is the subways and the buses and the Staten Island Railroad, and then 10% each is lockboxed for Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad. So everything that's coming from drivers entering the CBD is going to be invested in modernizing and improving and making our transit system an even better alternative to driving a car in what we know is already the most transit-rich place on Earth. So again, you live here, you work here, you don't need me to tell you that congestion is a problem. But what's even more important to remember is that congestion is actually worsening. It's not only been a challenge for decades, but it's something that's really gotten worse. We know that between 2010 and 2019, average travel speeds in the Manhattan CBD dropped about 23%. We know the pandemic changed things, but our latest data indicates that we're pretty much still where we were at just over 7 miles per hour average in 2023. So it's a problem that's not going anywhere on its own. And we believe that the plan that we've come up with is really the best way to not only reduce congestion, but also create a sustainable funding stream for our transit. There's going to be benefits not only for you here in the CBD, but for an entire 28 county region that we studied in the process of doing our environmental reviews for this project. Fewer vehicle trips, of course, is going to reduce air pollution, something that in the New York metro area is really quite high. It's going to reduce traffic noise, going to improve travel times for a lot of those essential vehicles that have to be on the road. I'm sure we've all had that nightmare scenario of seeing an ambulance stuck in Midtown traffic and thought, you know, glad it wasn't us, but we really believe that there's going to be benefits that go beyond just the CBD to all of New York City and all the metro area. To give a little example of where we've been since that law passed in 2019, we're really in what we think is the home stretch of this very long process that has involved a lot of public outreach from the very beginning. Of course, 2020, with the pandemic, things got a little waylaid, but we came straight back into early public outreach in 2021 with multiple public webinars, environmental justice discussions. At this time, we were preparing an environmental assessment, and this is a document required by the federal government, by the Federal Highway Administration. And it has to looked at about 14 different subject areas to see when we run models for how different tolling scenarios might work, what could be the impact on both the human and the natural environment. We looked not only at traffic flows and at things like parking that are ancillary to that, but also to economic conditions, social conditions, environmental justice, a wide variety of topics. And the environmental assessment, which is several thousand pages long, is available on our website for you to read, both in executive summary or to dive into any of the topics you like. Our first draft environmental assessment in 2022 was open for public comment. We received over 22,000 individual comments, 55,000 form letters. We held 6 hearings, over 550 speakers. And from all this public comment, we then revised and made additions and issued our final environmental assessment last year. The federal government reviewed it and issued what's called a finding of no significant impact. And what they found was that the project, as we presented it, should have no negative impacts, no unacceptable impacts on the human or natural environment. So from there, one thing that the law also designated, the Traffic Mobility Act, was that a group called the TMRB, or the Traffic Mobility Review Board, a board of 6 people with expertise in things like transportation, finance, business, would be charged with reviewing all this evidence and recommending a draft toll structure. They met 3 times in 3 public meetings beginning last summer, and then at the end of last November, they issued their reports. This report, again, is also available on our website, and it comes up with all the recommendations they made for exactly who should be told, what times, where, all the details that you see. So we created our draft toll schedule based on this, and where we are now is in something called the State Administrative Procedure Act. A public comment period for that draft toll schedule was opened on December 27th. It'll run through March 11th, and we're also holding those 4 hearings that the board mentioned and that I'll put back on screen. Then as we move toward our launch date in late spring, we're going to be increasing our public education efforts so that everyone can be prepared and know exactly what they need to do, how to work with their Easy Pass to sign up, exactly how this is all going to work. So we want people to be informed and to know what's going on. And then from there, we hope again to be launching in a few months. Here are the hearings where they're going to take place. You can come to our headquarters at 2 Broadway in Lower Manhattan, or you can join us on Zoom. We're really hoping to have representation from all over the region. But again, you are from the CBD, you either live here or work here. If you're involved in the community board, I'm sure, and we love to hear people's comments, whether on, again, on the specific of the draft toll schedule, positive, negative questions. We want to hear it from you, and we want to maintain these open lines of communication. So again, you can submit a comment for the record or go to our website to use our web form, and we do hope to see a good public turnout there. So what exactly does this toll rate schedule talk about? The full details are here at this kind of unwieldy link, but if you want to copy it down, you can see it in all its glory. But the bottom line is the tolls are only going to be charged for entering the CBD. And the main rate for cars, pickup trucks, SUVs, small vans is going to be $15 if you're using your Easy Pass during peak hours. And peak hours are between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays, and between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekends. For motorcycles, it will be half that, it's $7.50. Small trucks will be $24. Large trucks, $36. And as you see here, these large tour buses also at $36. And what's really important to know is that these rates will be down 75% during the overnight periods. So again, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. on weekdays and 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. on weekends. At that point, for a passenger vehicle, the charge is only going to be $3.75. So again, this is to encourage people to move their journeys if they can to the off-peak, to the overnight hours. We're also some other details of the toll rate schedule that, again, you can read in full on our website. There will be partial credit on the tunnel crossing tolls that go right into the CBD during peak hours if you use your Easy Pass. Also, being mindful that we don't want to put too much of a burden on low-income people who must drive for whatever reasons. We do have a low-income discount plan that will reduce the peak toll by 50% from your 11th trip, and all subsequent trips in a calendar month. And this is for people whose federal adjusted gross income is no more than $50,000 or who claim a WIC, TANF, or SNAP benefits. When it comes to exemptions, the universe of vehicles that we imagine will be exempt is very limited. And this, as the TMRB, if you were watching their meetings, explained, is for a very good reason. One of the many things that the Traffic Mobility Act requires is that we do raise a certain amount of money for that we can bond against for the MTA capital plan. So if we give exemptions to one group, then by definition, it is like the old scales balancing, the base toll for everyone else will be higher. So what the law says is that we must exempt qualifying authorized emergency vehicles like ambulances or fire trucks, and then qualifying vehicles transporting people with disabilities. What the TMRB recommended for exemptions is specialized government vehicles, not general transportation, but things like garbage trucks, pothole repair trucks, vehicles that can only do those specific municipal jobs. And then transit and commuter buses, as well as TLC licensed commuter vans. And then with the other big category of vehicles, taxis and for-hire vehicles, the TMRB recommended that these vehicles themselves are not tolled for entering the CBD, but rather because it's the customer who chooses to make the journey that contributes to congestion, there will be this toll charged for the customer to pay. $125 for taxis, green cabs, and traditional livery black cars, and then $250 for the trips that are dispatched by apps. So I think from here we can move on to the questions. I've put my email address up here because, again, we want to make sure that we're maintaining open communication. We know that this is one of the most transformative things we've done for transportation in quite a while, and we're the first city in the United States to be doing it. So even though there's a lot of interest in it. So I'm happy to take questions from now on, or we could go right into the ones that you shared earlier.
Yeah, if we can please start with the pre-submitted questions. Just a note on other questions, I would like to hold general discussion on the specifics of the proposal until we go into each item of the proposals, so we can keep the discussion organized. If you have any general questions that are not a part of any of those particular criteria, we can address those now. But for the most part, I'm hoping to keep questions and comments into the specifics of each item of the proposal.
I don't know whether that's general or not. Generally speaking, in no communication do I see what happens to people who live in CBD and own a car, and if they roam around within the CBD.
We'll cover that in the moment. Okay, so yeah, can we start off please with the
Jason, I have a general question. I have my hand up.
Can we just do the pre-questions first and then, Bayal, we'll come back to you?
Okay, thank you.
Right, so the first question that I received from you was when drivers come across the bridges and tunnels south of 60th Street into Manhattan, can they get a toll to the can they get to the FDR or the West Side Highway without paying a toll? And the short answer is it depends on your route. So I'll go through all of them. From the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, drivers can connect onto West Street for the West Street Highway, for the West Side Highway, or use the Battery Park Underpass to access the excluded roadways and not have to pay the toll if they then continue on out of the CBD. But if they exit the tunnel onto Trinity Place into Lower Manhattan, then they will be tolled. All routes into Manhattan via the Lincoln, Holland, and Queens Midtown Tunnel will be tolled. They require payment of the CBD toll. However, as I mentioned previously, if you're paying with a valid Easy Pass, drivers will receive a credit against the cost of the toll during the peak hours. And that credit also applies to the Hugh Carey Tunnel. If you take the Williamsburg or the Manhattan Bridge into Manhattan, then you will be tolled because those bridges touch down directly into the CBD. For the Brooklyn Bridge, there is a route where you can connect directly to the FDR by the ramp without entering the CBD. So that route will not be tolled if, again, you connect onto the FDR and then go through and do not exit onto any of the local streets in the CBD. And again, if there's one exception though, and this is a really important one because it's actually something that we put in for our final environmental assessment to reduce some unwanted traffic diversions. If you're traveling northbound on the FDR and then you exit at East Houston Streets and then immediately turn southbound on the FDR, you will be tolled in that case. Vehicles traveling into Manhattan from Queens via the Ed Koch Queensboro 59th Street Bridge, you will not be tolled if you use the North Upper Roadway, which leads directly, touches down onto East 62nd Street, because then you're above 60th. All other routes into Manhattan on that bridge do lead directly into the CBD, and you will be tolled. If you take that North Upper Roadway routes onto East 62nd, and then you get on the FDR from outside the CBD, and travel along there, you won't pay the toll again unless you exit onto a local street in the CBD. I think that should cover every crossing.
And we'll have a section to discuss if we want our feedback on that. Yes, thank you very much. I think that was your question, if I remember. No, thank you. Okay. All good with that.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer, and thank you.
Thank you. And then thanks. I believe the second question you had was, is there any way using our existing equipment, the mast arms with the cameras on them that you've probably seen now at 60th Street, is there any way to sense changes in the intensity of congestion that might make it possible to have dynamically adjusted tolls, kind of like in response to roadway demand, kind of like surge pricing for congestion charging? So right now we have no plans for real-time dynamic pricing, and that's because the Traffic Mobility Act, that 2019 law, it set up the TMRB, like we mentioned, and they were charged with making recommendations, and that was not something that they recommended doing. Dynamic pricing was not one of their recommendations. But I think more fundamentally, we think it's important when launching a program like this, which is first in the United States, unprecedented. We want to make it extremely clear to drivers how much they'll be charged and when. We think predictability and clear information is really important to the success of the program. If we can keep the toll structure really straightforward and predictable, again, working within the law and certain things we're required to do, like have a lowered overnight toll, we think the program will be as successful as possible, the easier it is for the public to understand. So we do want to kind of avoid too much complexity. And again, because we want to encourage some trips to shift into the less congested overnight hours, our overnight toll is 75% lower than the peak toll. And the draft toll rate schedule also proposes that the toll could be raised up to 25% on gridlock alert days, which in a way, kind of speaks to the same issue and adjustment for roadway demand. But again, gridlock alert days, they're on the calendar, they're highly predictable. And that's what's really important, no surprises to drivers. And in general, the draft toll rate schedule was informed by really extensive traffic modeling over this 28 county area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And that was what was completed for our environmental assessment for the federal government. And those models were based on very clear separated peak and overnight times, rather than a variable dynamic model. It was just a bit too complex to model. And of course, in the future, based on what we see, things could change. But right now, we're committed to having this peak toll and then a deeply discounted overnight rate.
Thanks. Larry?
It's a thoughtful answer, the one I expected. But if dynamic pricing ever would be considered in the future, can you answer the question whether a new statute or an amendment to the current statute would be required?
I actually do not know about that. I could not speak to the exact legal parts of it. I am not a lawyer. Yeah, but it is definitely, you know, an interesting thing because of course our goal is to reduce congestion. And I'm glad that people are engaging with the toll schedule and coming up with thoughtful questions like these. So thank you.
Is it technically feasible with the existing setup to implement?
Well, what our mast arms are doing is we are collecting data. You will notice that they are located on streets coming out of the CBD, even though we are not tolling for exiting. And this is because we are collecting really a tremendous amount of data. We've put this all in our in the executive summary of the environmental assessment, a list of all the data we're collecting and then all the reporting we're going to be doing. We're hoping to really harness open data so that people can, you know, see for themselves. If they want to do some citizen science, we're more than happy. We'll be looking at vehicle miles traveled, number of vehicles entering. I know that the New York City Department of Transportation by law is doing a parking study. We're going to be having a lot of air quality data. So we are gathering a lot of data, and I think it does kind of remain in the future how this data could be creatively used.
Thanks.
And then the final question we got from you was what plans are in place to combat or deter toll evasion, things like obstructed, defaced, missing license plates. So let me start by saying that where we currently are, I'm from MTA Bridges and Tunnels, and we are the agency that tolls a lot of the bridges and the tunnels all around New York City. So the vast majority of our customers right now are doing the right thing and paying their tolls. But with that said, we here at MTA do have a really robust and multi-pronged program to address toll scofflaws using the powers that we already have granted to our TBTA officers. They're peace officers in the eyes of New York state law, and they can stop and they can enforce. And 2023 was actually a banner year for us for toll enforcement. Our officers recovered over $4 million from vehicle stops for toll evasion. So that was our highest amount ever, and they're really doing, you know, a tremendous amount of work there. They issued about 3,200 summonses for things like defaced, covered, altered, obstructed plates. And we anticipate that we'll essentially be using a lot of those same tools in the CBD. But it's important also to remember that our agency is not the only one. We're not insulated in the enforcement efforts. We're going to be teaming up with regional stakeholders, really. New York State Police, NYPD, New York City Sheriff's Office, which is part of the Department of Finance, the Port Authority Police Department, and then the rest of the MTA PD. So we also really appreciate the governor's support in the legislative efforts that could expand our law enforcement capabilities with regard to persistent toll evaders. So we're doing a lot of work on that now. We anticipate using the same tools, and we're going to be working really closely with these with our partners because it is, I think, in all of our interests that people are paying this toll.
Is there funding allocated to provide the additional law enforcement for MTA that I imagine will be needed given the expansion of the tolling areas?
I actually can't speak about other parts of MTA. I do not have that information on me right now, but I think that we've got, you know, a really robust force right now as it stands.
Got it. Okay. With the question you mentioned before, if we'll cover that when we get to the specifics of the proposal, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
B, I know you had a general question. Just quick on the public. We'll come back to comments from the public when we talk about the individual sections of the letter. I'd like to keep things condensed if we can. B, go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. So in your presentation and the presentation just given, we talk about the lockbox. And the lockbox to me is very significant. I think one of the reasons we had supported was for public transportation and the improvements there. Listening to your tolling and how you're doing things, how are you going to keep track to actually make sure that the funds that come in here are going to a lockbox? And lockboxes are used philosophically as opposed to really locking stuff up. But how is the funding going to be monitored and audited to make sure it's used for the purposes?
Well, simply put, it's the law. So it's something that we have to comply with. We are encouraging everybody to pay through EasyPass because that is really the most straightforward way for us to manage revenues. But of course, if people do not have EasyPass, they will receive tolls by mail. And I mean, it's simply put that, you know, we are a state agency at the MTA and we must comply with state laws and that's what we are going to be doing.
All right, that's not an answer to the question, so I'll come back later on.
Okay, great. Thank you, B. All right, and thanks to the MTA for the presentation and for answering our prepared questions. I'm going to move on with our agenda on this topic on specifically talking to each of the components of the proposed tolling structure. Would appreciate if the MTA stayed on to be able to answer any questions that may come up in that discussion.
If they're going to go off, I have a specific question about one aspect, if I might ask.
About that's covered in the specific tolling structure?
Yes.
I will, no. Please hold up, please hold that question until we get to the element.
Please do encourage them to stay.
Yes, we would very much appreciate your continued presence. Is someone going to stay on, which will address Larry's concern?
Brendan, I think we do have a hard stop at around 8:30, but we're happy to stay on until then to answer any additional questions. But after that, we would have a hard stop.
Okay, that's great. All right, great. All right, so let's move on. Brendan, if you could bring the presentation back up, please.
Any particular slide?
Yeah, if you want to jump in right there. Yep. Yep.
This one?
Next one. Next one. Perfect. Okay, yeah, so yes, so just a reminder in terms of how we're going to structure this conversation. In the next several slides, we cover each element of the tolling structure. I will first open it up to members of the committee to provide comments on that particular structure or in that particular element of the proposal. And then if we have time, we will return to invite members of the public to make any comment about that specific component of the proposal. Please keep your comments relevant to the pertinent item being element of the proposal being discussed. If you're in person, once we reach the public comment period, please raise your hands. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand using the raised hand icon on Zoom. And just note also, we may need to limit the amount of comments that we have and limit time to up to 2 minutes. With that said, we will move on to the specifics. Actually keep the screen share open. It just keeps this. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So first thing for discussion is the base toll rates. So as was presented, we have for personal vehicles and small commercial vehicles, we have a $15 fee in the peak period, and then we have $3.75 in the off peak. Motorcycles have a $7.50 toll and a $1.75 toll in off peak, and trucks will have somewhere between $24 to $36 toll, depending on the size and function of the vehicle, and an off peak toll of $6 to $8. Just to know quickly, we have the next item of discussion will be a discussion of the timeframes of what peak and off peak is. So right now I want to open the floor to discussion on the amounts and what's on the slide. Anyone have any comments from the committee? We'll come back to the public in a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's the truck tolls are significantly higher than the vehicles, obviously. So there's some concern about inflationary costs being passed along to consumers when trucks are delivering, say, essential goods such as groceries or pharmacy items and those type things. So, so that I would say that's a main concern as far as the actual tolls from this district for those who live and work here. So I think that's something that we need to address somehow, whether it be credits to. I understand exemptions will be limited. There's just not enough infrastructure to carve out exemptions for every purpose, but there should be some sort of credits to companies that are providing essential services. to the district.
So I'll respond to that. I believe the philosophy on the proposal, in my opinion, on the outcome of congestion pricing is that by reducing the congestion that we see, it will make these deliveries more efficient. And while they will be paying the toll, ultimately they'll be able to bring down the costs of deliveries by being able to complete deliveries more efficiently, not being stuck in traffic. And that should offset the tolling that they are paying.
And they're only paying it once a day, correct?
Also correct, yes.
Right, but yeah, once a day could be, very costly if they're delivering, say, fresh produce to.
Yes, but instead of being held up in traffic, getting from the tunnel to wherever they're getting their delivery to in an hour, they'll be able to maybe get there in 10 minutes, which saves the driver who's being paid, I don't know how many dollars an hour to reduce the time that it takes to make that trip.
Hi, sorry, sorry, I just wanted to provide a point of clarification. There is a limit to once daily toll on passenger vehicles and motorcycles. There is not a cap on the toll for trucks or buses.
In terms of daily trips, so that means they would, if they would get the toll coming in and out of the.
No, multiple entries would be multiple tolls for trucks or buses. Passenger vehicles and motorcycles will be tolled no more than once per day.
Thank you. Please.
Oh, yeah, it's just about the trucks being 24 to 36. Looks like off peak, they're $6 to $8. So, it would be a huge benefit to the city to have these truck deliveries, off hours. And if we're not, there's a lot less pedestrian traffic, so it's a massive benefit to the city. Anyway, also, I just wanted to say thank you to Julia Laidlaw for coming and, very thoughtful presentation. Just want to thank you.
And I know that there's an existing city program for encouraging like off-peak deliveries. I'm not exactly sure the specifics of it, but I definitely do know and see in myself companies taking advantage of later night deliveries. I see that a lot with some of the big food chains and some of the drugstores where those deliveries are taking place at night. So I would assume many businesses are already set up to take advantage of these off-peak tolls because they're already operating in that way.
There's a lock boxes connected with that.
The existing program?
Yeah, if there's nobody there to physically receive the delivery.
Okay, got it. I just want to get the guys in. Sure. I'll recognize you and then we'll come back in person.
I also would just mention there what you were talking about. Yes, there is a program through the New York City Department of Transportation called the Off Hours Delivery Program. And one of the commitments made in our environmental assessment is to actually expand that program to encourage more deliveries to happen during the overnight hours when the toll is lower. But that is something that is administered by DOT.
Thank you, appreciate that. And please feel free to keep jumping in. I appreciate it, thank you. B, go ahead.
So I do have a question about trucks. I do have a distinction the same way you have income. We have small businesses and we have the large chains. And my real concern is, especially as you articulated, that anytime they enter in during peak hours, they would have to pay. So was any consideration given to the size of the business and in doing some modification of that for the trucks?
Is that for me to answer?
I don't know if that was under consideration or not. I'm suggesting I think there needs to be something, but I don't know if that was in the discussion.
So we haven't proposed tolling vehicles based on anything other than their type and size. But what we did find in doing the study for our EA, which is in the chapter we call Economic Considerations, is that the average truck making deliveries to the CBD is doing about 5.5 stops every time. So we do think the toll is getting diluted to the level where we don't think it's going to have that big of an effect on the eventual price. For example, if a truck is carrying, X amount of soda cans and making all those different stops, by the time you get to selling that one can, the amount of it that would be represented by the toll would be really think minuscule. But, mindful of the impact on small businesses, another commitment that we made was setting up a small business working group, which met a couple of weeks ago, and is going to be meeting again 6 months after implementation and then subsequent over the next several years to discuss the needs of small businesses and how they might be impacted here. So we've already established connections with all of the business improvement districts in the CBD and adjacent to the CBD because we know that they're really good conduits for the businesses in their district and getting information and questions to and from. And we're looking forward to, continuing to be able to answer questions and to take on board whatever feedback they could give us.
Thank you very much. Javier, this would be, I think this was the pertinent to your question about the toll crossings and when they applied. Is that, was that already answered, or if you want to ask it now?
No, it's not. So my question was, if somebody already lives in CBD, owns a car, uses the car within CBD, will they be charged?
No.
That's a good question. No, you will not be charged for any journey that is made entirely within the CBD.
Okay.
No call.
Yeah,
However,
like if you move your car for alternate side parking, you will not be told for that.
yeah. I mean, it's exactly. And what about if I go into FDR and come back? Will they be charged then?
You will be charged if you go onto the excluded roadway and then come back into the CBD.
Okay.
Stay local streets.
All right, let's go to Gabe, and then I'll come back. I know we've got still just trying to balance. Gabe, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, I have a comment and a question. My comment is I manage grocery stores, and I assure you these trucks lose an absolute fortune sitting in traffic. So anything that speeds them up will probably be beneficial to businesses and consumers. My question is, can we treat SUVs like small trucks instead of like cars?
We cannot, as per the law, because they are considered, individual passenger vehicles. We have to treat them and small vans and small pickup trucks really as the same.
But that's actually an interesting and important point then, because would those small trucks and pickup trucks be subject to the once daily cap?
Because they're passenger vehicles, they are subject to once daily. An SUV or a personal pickup truck, not like a delivery truck. They are smaller. They do have a smaller footprint, so the space they take up is less.
So to B's point, when you were talking about small businesses impacted, I imagine I guess it highly varies, but many small businesses would not be subject to the same hardship that the large trucks would be imposed on the larger fee, that they would be only subject to the once daily and the lower $15 peak fee. Okay, go ahead.
Jumping off B, I'm curious, is the percentage of Amazon and Walmart trucks negligible, or are they the elephant I think they might be?
I do not have any information on what percentage of traffic coming into the CBD is specifically Amazon or Walmart's. But I would not have that information, I'm afraid.
I mean, I can only speculate, but I imagine when you look at like Amazon, UPS, the delivery carriers, that's probably a large chunk of the big trucks. And I'm sorry, I'll come back. Larry, go ahead.
No, for next slide, maybe.
Okay, cool. Anyone else from the committee who wants to make any comment, and I'll open it up to the public. All right. So I know, once again, if you're here in person, please raise your hand. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand using the Zoom hand raising function. If you have a comment specific to the base toll rates, if you have a comment on other elements of this program, please, we will cover those topics momentarily. And please.
Okay, I'm just gonna reply, it's a general thing about, which I wish we had more information about, which is actually what is causing the congestion in our district. Because I believe it is for hire vehicles. There are always a million Amazon UPS trucks.
So we're gonna talk about the specifics of the tolling for those.
You think there are a lot of them, and I think there are, but they are not moving, so they are not causing congestion.
Okay, sure, thank you. Guy, please.
Might be related to that, but I want to know this with the Sprinter vans, like how are they categorized? And how small they get, so they would be.
Thanks. Just to repeat, yeah, I was, just to repeat the question for those on Zoom. The question was, what would a Sprinter van be categorized under these categories? Would that fall as a passenger vehicle and small commercial vehicle or a truck?
So the details of exactly how to classify some of the vehicles are in the draft toll rate schedule on our website. But if the Sprinter van has kind of that raised roof, then it does get the rate of a small truck.
A small truck, which is the passenger vehicle toll, correct?
No, a small truck
Oh.
is in the $24.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I would need to kind of see the vehicle itself, but the descriptions in depth of how the vehicles are categorized are in that draft toll schedule.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? All right,
On the Zoom, let's start off with Carrie Green. I'm going to grant you the floor, or
yep, go ahead. If you can unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you all for your hard work at the MTA and the community board for making the air better here and helping us get to where we need to go as residents in this area. I have to say, I find the fee of $15 really quite steep. I'm a resident. I garage my car. I already pay taxes for garaging that car. And I know we haven't gotten to the timeframes yet, but if I needed to leave the city to, for whatever my need is, I would have to pay this fee only to return my vehicle to the parking garage when I'm done with my out-of-town trip. And this seems like a really high bar, and I'm being penalized when I'm not even going to be contributing to the traffic congestion. If I understand, the peak hour ends at 9 p.m. So in order for me to benefit from the off-peak, I'd have to wait or plan my travels so that I'm coming home after dinner time, just to get down to a $3.75 fee just to get off the FDR Drive at 23rd Street and park my vehicle on 20th Street in a Stuyvesant Town garage. Yet I'm hearing that if I were to leave my Stuyvesant Town garage and drive all day long during peak hours inside the zone, I wouldn't be charged anything. There's just something illogical with this. And I'm wondering if a potential solution could be that garages for residents in the area could have some kind of E-ZPass reader installed so that if you get off the FDR Drive, you can park in your garage if there's a time limit to get your car in the garage. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody, if there's anything we want to respond on the MTA there, but otherwise, appreciate the thoughts in terms of what we could come out with a recommendation. Okay, I'm going to, I see we have other comments from the public, but I'm mindful of the fact we have 6 minutes left with the DOT. So I would like to move us to the next topic so that we can maximize our time with the DOT.
MTA.
I'm sorry, MTA, I apologize for misagency identifying. We will still have opportunity for other comments from the public. Okay.
Yeah. Just one thing that I do want to clarify, just because again, this is not our presentation on the screen right now, but the passenger vehicle rates, the auto toll rate, the $15, that is strictly only sedans, minivans, SUVs, pickup trucks, and small vans. I would not call it small commercial vehicles. However, those vehicles I just described, if they have commercial plates, they can still get the passenger vehicle rates. I would just be very wary. I would not call them small commercial vehicles because I wouldn't want people to get confused between that and like a small box truck. So just in terms of your communications within the board, just for clarity, again, if people consult, go to our website and consult the draft toll rate schedule, that gives the specific details on the types of vehicles.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll update that on before we distribute this out. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, next slide, Brendan, please, so we can just try to get some questions in. Okay, so the next thing we had on here was the peak and off-peak hours. So quickly, basically, the peak hours right now are being proposed as weekdays from 5 AM to 9 PM and weekends from 9 AM to 9 PM. And then the off peaks are basically just the converse of that. Before I open it up for questions, is there anything specific that is there any or discussion? Is there any specific questions for the MTA with the final moments we have with them from the board first, and then we'll go to the public? Larry.
Yeah, I'd like to skip ahead to the $5 toll offset.
Larry, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'd like to keep us on topic on this. I appreciate that we're limited on time. But I'll see if we can, I'll come back. Nothing else from the committee on questions on this? Did we have anyone in the public specifically who wanted to ask a question about the peak and off-peak hours? Please.
I wanted to ask you a question about the congestion pricing in general and the tolling. I wanted to ask about like.
I'm sorry, but I'd like to keep the conversation specific right now to the peak and off-peak hours.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask about how the peak and off-peak hours affect the FDR Drive and the other highways, because like, I'm unsure about like how the hours affect and how the congestion pricing affects those roads, because I see the tolling devices on them. And I'm unsure about what an excluded roadway is.
I'm not sure if I heard all of that, but the FDR Drive is always an excluded roadway. So it can always be traveled along, and so long as you do not enter the CBD from there, regardless of the time, it's not tolled.
But what was the question as it relates to the times about the outer boroughs?
I was asking like about like the peak and off-peak hours also. I wanted to know. So the peak hours are the peak hours start at 5 AM, right? And on the weekends, I see the peak hours are 9 AM to 9 PM. So how are the weekend peak hours determined?
How were they determined?
Yeah.
These are recommendations from the Traffic Mobility Review Board, and they looked at traffic volumes at different times of days and different days of the week. And it turns out that these are the times during which the peak hours in which congestion is the most severe within the CBD. Even away from the highest of the high hours, we still do see very high volumes throughout all the peak hours.
All right. I think we'll let the MTA go, being respectful of your time commitment. Thank you guys for being on late and for coming and for answering all of our questions. We will continue the conversation here amongst the board, but thank you very much. I appreciate you guys coming on and answering our questions.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? I'm gonna open the floor up generally. Any other discussion that we have, maybe not with specific questions for the MTA about specifically about peak and off-peak hours, and we'll continue on to the other items as well. But just I was asking before that we keep it focused. Any questions we had open, and I'm just saying if we have any questions about or questions or discussion about these hours specifically, I'm opening that up for discussion. Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
I'm sorry, I do have a car, I drive in the city, I do everything in the city. And like the weekends are just way different. So, I mean, I feel like having weekend, like I understand why they don't think, I've been working on congestion pricing for 16 years, so I'm very familiar with all the science and analysis behind it. I understand why they don't want dynamic pricing, but it actually seems like having cheaper pricing on the weekend, not just 9 to 9, might do some transference of traffic. So I'm not sure, like changing that it's only 5 AM to 9 AM is gonna really have any kind of impact.
So your concern is the 9 PM cutoff primarily, that it should be earlier?
No, I think like the weekends in general, like 9 AM, like what's going on? Like you go out on Sunday at 10 AM, it's not a lot, there's not a lot of traffic.
But you try to come back a little later in the day and you can't move on the end of the.
Exactly, so maybe it should.
Because I'm
be-
sorry, just to avoid the
So
crosstalk,
maybe-
we gotta wait till
so
we're
maybe it
recognized, thank
should
you.
be, like, maybe it should be on the weekends, it should be 5 PM to 9 PM.
Okay, thanks, Larry, you had a comment?
And, it's different in your neighborhood than it is in the East Village at different hours on the weekend. They try to create a one size fits all. You're not gonna be happy, if your neighborhood is quiet and, another neighborhood is, busy and.
So do you feel like in Skytown, it's the same on Sunday? Like, it's then like.
Weekends are busy further downtown.
For sure, they're busier than they are in Midtown.
You go to brunch.
Okay, we're gonna move on, sorry, thank you. Okay, I'd like to recognize somebody on Zoom, we have, Eileen, you have the floor, please, and Brendan, if you could set the timer, please, just so we can move these.
Hi, it's Elaine. I'm a Midtown resident. I really sympathize with that woman, Carrie, speaking earlier. The MTA slide said that there's only 15% of the people in the district that have cars, and it's awful the degree to which we're being discriminated against all other New Yorkers. You can't pick up a sick child at school and drive them home without paying a fee.
I'm sorry,
Let me just finish.
Do you have a comment on the peak and off-peak pricing?
Yes, that was a preface. And these off-peak hours exacerbate the situation because it looks like for seniors, I mean, this is great. If you want to get a break as a senior, you got to drive at midnight to go home, just to go home. And if you want to get a break on the fee, if you've got a sick child, you might as well just keep them at school until it gets to 9 PM and you can come home. I mean, I just don't get it. It's the only city program I've ever seen that didn't give a break to people who are being doubly punished like this. And the off-peak hours are almost laughable for people who live in the district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's, is there a question in the background? Live in the district and benefit from?
I just wonder about with weekends, the different considerations of like why people are driving into the business area. So, especially, I mean, I do think with restaurants, things like that, it's $15 fee, like what conversations have they had with people or like how this is going to impact those businesses that are kind of elastic like that, where people aren't gonna spend an extra $15 to go to a restaurant below 60th and they don't want to make it 53rd. Yeah, so I guess that would be my question, is like what groups, have they considered those specific groups and the differences between weekdays and weekends?
Well, I think to partially answer the question is, it's intentional that the zones are periods where people would want to travel into the central business district and to encourage them to take transit and other means to get to within this central business district. So I don't think it's an error in the setup that people who would be coming for dinner or brunch would be subject to the toll. I think that's explicitly the intention of the program.
A feature, not a bug.
Correct. Okay, I'll come back. I just want to do one more person on Zoom. Ally, I recognize you, please. And again, if you could, just a reminder, if everybody please keeps the discussion relevant to the specific topic at hand.
Okay, my husband's gonna speak.
Hi, I was just like to introduce the idea that we change the language and stop referring to the central business district, because we are residents. We live in the central residential district, and we should be treated differently and accordingly. We do not run businesses here. For me to go in and out to home to work is going to be about $5,000 a year. I did not get a $5,000 a year raise.
It's just, I'm sorry, but again, I'm going to ask you to stay on topic on the time.
Isn't it about the price?
No, it's about the
Well, all right,
peak and
the other, but
off-peak
the hours, I leave between 5 and 6 a.m. every day, and I'm the only car I'll see for blocks on end. This is East Village, Lower East Side.
going up 3rd Avenue.
And
Or actually, that's going down, going up First Avenue.
so I don't think they based it as much on congestion as much as on how to, get as much money out of people possible. Because I don't think if they bumped it to 7 a.m. or something, it wouldn't cost it wouldn't bring in much different income. Because I see the streets and they're very empty, and I know somebody just said it's different per neighborhood and whatever. But if that's the case, then you need to look at it and maybe reassess the entire central residential district, because that's where I live.
Thank you.
Let's make these remarks.
Yeah, that's good. Larry.
Okay, let me see if I understand the problem. You are driving between 5 and 6 a.m. In which direction?
I leave Manhattan. I work out of Manhattan. So yeah, I leave.
Okay, you get charged 0 for leaving.
That's
So you don't have to worry about the 5 a.m. Doesn't mean anything.
I'm sorry, but that's not true. I've attended a CV3 meeting and I read that you get charged going and coming.
That's
No,
wrong.
no,
That's wrong.
It's once per day, you would be capped.
So the key hour here is when you're going to come home. That's the hour that you would be charged for. So if you come back at 5 o'clock in the evening, you will be charged the peak rate. But only once.
Yeah.
My main point about the times though is that I think it's not congested. I'm not seeing congestion when I'm on the road at that time. But yes,
You're not being charged to leave. What's your problem?
Let's move on. Thank you. I appreciate the comments and thank you for raising it. I know you've been waiting patiently in the back. I appreciate it.
To her point about people coming into restaurants and on weekends or really even in the evenings to come to Carter Broadway, and they are driving in, aren't they all gonna park above 60th Street or look for parking up in 60th Street and cause crazy congestion north of 60th Street rather than add $15 to their date out? I mean, I just don't understand the logic of a 9 p.m.
I'll provide my own opinion.
Actually, when I come home, I go out and go, my brother lives out on Long Island, I have a cousin who lives out, we go to the beach often, I come home, I live inside town, and it adds, this weekend it would have cost me $45.
Sorry, I'm gonna say the same thing I asked people in Zoom. Specific, keeping it specific to that.
Okay, so the 9 o'clock cutoff is just unfair to the people who live in the zone who have to pay $15 to come home.
Well, again, the intention of the program is to charge the toll. It is not to make it inconvenient for people not to be charged the toll. The idea is to discourage travel into the central business district during hours of congestion.
Have to go home.
You would pay the toll.
To live in a congested area, and this is to alleviate congestion.
Yeah, it's such a bad. It's all about the empty, raising money.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
Absolutely true.
Carrie, I'm gonna recognize you again. Please keeping the conversation specific to.
Turnstiles where people cheat.
Sir, please, we're moving on. Brenda, go ahead.
That they just built.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to add to my earlier comment, now that I see the weekend peak hour times, the point I want to bring up is that I'm not making a choice. I live here and I own a car, and I am going to be heavily penalized for leaving the city and then coming back into the zone simply to park my car in the garage. This is really an undue burden to residents. I understand if I come in and I'm going to drive all around in the zone, but the fact that I can leave my garage and not be charged at all if I'm still within the confines of the district, I don't get charged. I really urge you to come up with some kind of solution, because I have a modest income. I can't afford $15 just to go and park my car in a garage on the weekends and on weekdays. I would like to know how I can advocate for this kind of exemption.
Yeah, I mean, appreciate the comments. Again, you can submit your feedback to the MTA directly. We'll keep that in mind as we're looking at our recommendations for this. And I'm sorry, we'll come back. But would like to move on to Kevin on Zoom, please.
Hi, guys. I sort of have a similar situation as the woman that was just speaking, with regard to leaving work and then coming back in the time frame for peak hours and then just simply dropping my car in the garage. So I think this is a rather important idea to look into. Secondly, I just wanted to find out, so if I'm leaving the zone during the day and I get on the FDR Drive and I was to exit, let's say I went to Chinatown. I got on the FDR Drive and exited for the Chinatown or Brooklyn Bridge exits or Civic Center exits, I would be charged as entering the zone, correct? At that point, if I took the FDR Drive downtown from, let's say, 23rd Street?
Correct. Once you get onto the FDR, you would be, or sorry, once you get out of the FDR and back into the Central Business District, you would be subject to the toll, to the once daily cap on it.
So if he comes back to Manhattan, he
Right.
won't be charged then.
No, what I'm saying is if literally, it would be better for me to add to the congestion of the zone by taking the side streets.
That is correct,
Amazing.
I will
But is he coming
say
back to Manhattan? That's the question.
I think, again, this is just my personal opinion. There's very limited cases of people who live within the Central Business District who are traveling by car within and only within, or with the intention only between the bounds of the Central Business District.
Sure.
While I agree that may happen occasionally, I think you're gonna be hard pressed to find.
Yeah, well, I mean, that it would happen at all is just hard, is interesting. And why not take into consideration what they do in London and offer those that live within the zone a significant decrease? Not that we shouldn't pay something, but it does seem like an extra burden, especially if you're up in the morning, you leave, you come home, and literally I get off the FDR Drive at 20th Street, I drive to 14th Street and park my car. I'm now going to be charged an extra $15 per day, $65 per week. I don't want to do the math for the 52 weeks of the year. Maybe one of you guys really quickly could get your slide read out. But I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of additional money.
Thank you. Brock, do you have something?
No.
Larry, did you want to respond? Briefly, please.
To study this.
Sorry, we gotta just keep it to order.
There have been.
No, okay, all right, we're gonna move on to the next element of the proposal for discussion, please. Brendan, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so next we're moving on to discussion around the tolls, which it will apply to taxis and app-based for hire vehicles. Important to note that this fee that we will be talking about, or this toll we will be talking about, will be charged to passengers for each trip to, from, or within the Central Business District. So this is different from the criteria we were discussing before about personal vehicles and commercial vehicles. Again, that's trips to, from, and within the Central Business District for passengers of taxis and app-based vehicles. Those passengers are going to be charged for taxis, green cabs, and black cars, $1.25. And for app-based or hire vehicles, so that's your Ubers and your Lyfts, that's going to be $2.50. The drivers of those vehicles, for their initial start of the day effectively, and their returns home, the vehicles themselves and the drivers of those vehicles are not going to be subject to the toll. Again, I will open it up to the committee for any thoughts, comments, feedback, questions, discussion. Larry?
Okay, we're going to have to see what the data is after a period of time, the cost, the benefits, the amount of money the MTA will make versus how much congestion will continue. And that's why there's a follow-up program.
Yeah. So your suggestion is this may be good or bad? And
We don't know.
We'll have to see.
We can't predict.
Okay, anything else from the committee?
Just, it's just a minor thing, but why would those be different? You know what I mean? Like, I could e-hail a taxi or I could e-hail an Uber. What difference does it make to me personally? It's just interesting that.
I think it's protection.
Protecting taxis because.
Yes, the drivers.
Medallions.
Yes.
There's also precedent at the last several fees that have been introduced by the MTA, or to
TLC.
taxis by TLC have been tiered for different tiers
Yeah.
for the ride hailing vehicles. I think it's a valid question about why that's the case, and just saying that's been the case for a while.
The Ubers, I'm sorry, the Ubers and the Lyfts were disruptors.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just.
I just want to keep the
No, I
conversation.
was just gonna say that, I mean, the taxi drivers have invested in the medallion over the years, and in order to protect that investment, there's, they're now looking at, a lower fee there, but my concern here is this is probably not a deterrent for anybody that's taking one of those vehicles, and they probably won't even notice it. So I'm questioning, how much congestion it is going to actually improve based on.
You have data from around the world.
Well, so do you suggest that we would increase this to make it more, to do more deterrent?
Yes.
I mean, I think the difference between a $15 passenger vehicle and a $2.50 Uber or Lyft, I think is night and day. So I think there should be a little bit more parity.
Oh, okay. I will comment in, my own opinion. I believe that people taking taxis for hire vehicles, et cetera, yes, these vehicles do contribute to congestion, but these are lower overall levels of congestion when these are shared vehicles that are, I don't want to overly penalize those who are not driving their own personal vehicles. And I see it as it's not transit, but I see it as a it's a little bit lesser of an evil when it pertains to congestion pricing, because I see these as people who are contributing less towards congestion by not having to look for parking. I appreciate there's a balance there because these vehicles are circulating.
I mean, it's, we'll have to see how it pans out, but I don't think I think that, with 101,000 and potentially growing number of these vehicles, anecdotally, anytime I go out on the street, more than 50% of them have the TLC plate. So I think there's definitely, within certain blocks of the congestion zone, I think you have to look at, who's actually in the middle of the day, who's actually on the roads, and I would say it's a significant amount of for hire vehicles, so.
Yep, B, I see your hand.
I wanted also to look at the demographics, because I think when you look at this, who's using it during the day, this becomes an alternative for seniors, individuals with disabilities, and so going to medical appointments and stuff. So I think this means that it provides an alternate means of transportation for a group of the city, the 85% that don't have cars and need to get to places and can't use public transportation. So I think we should be conscious of the demographics.
Okay, anything else from the members of the committee? And then I know we have hands here and I will address them. Okay, sorry, in the back, go ahead.
Is there any way that they're gonna be cut off at the $15 limit for these cars? So the passenger, instead of charging every single passenger that takes a ride in and out of the zone, they could be raising $50 a day or more, and it's coming out of the passenger's pockets.
So each passenger is paying that toll.
Right, but the car itself is raising.
No, the car itself is not being charged any toll.
The total $1.25 that's gonna be added to the fare for, say, 150 people that ride into that car that come in and out of the zone that day. That's gonna be $50-$60 if that car is contributing to the congestion pricing.
Yes.
So the 50th person that rides in that cab shouldn't have to pay the $1.25 surcharge.
Why?
Because they've already raised their way more than their.
But that individual, you're talking about the car, not the trip as a part of raising that. Okay, I appreciate the comment. You just want to make sure, okay, I'll recognize Anne and we'll go to you.
So Jerry, you said something about having data that sounded relevant.
Well, we have benefit of the rest of the world, and we have.
Well, no, I know about the rest of the world.
Yeah, so of course there are gonna be unique situations to areas and cities, but.
Right, but I mean, I think that kind of raised my issue, which is I'm concerned that this number is not high enough, actually, that it might be worth making cars, $13 and making these $2. Like, I don't know what the number is, and I don't know what the modeling is, but I just feel like when I walk out on my street, at least 50% of the vehicles are for hire vehicles. And yes, I know that is different from where Larry lives, and it's different at different times of day, and different days of the week. But I kind of feel like this is not gonna do anything to, in what we're trying to do.
And I'm gonna cut you off. Appreciate the comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Larry, did you have something?
there-
Okay, this is fun.
This is supposed to raise $10 billion under the statute. Now, inflation is eaten into the benefit of that, and it may be necessary to go back to Albany, to raise the target and then recalculate.
But my question is actually to Jerry, do we actually have data on what percentage of vehicles, it's probably in the EAS?
Well, and I'd love a follow-up from them as far as what is the breakdown, because, and I think you were saying it, I think
In terms of
I think
VMT,
I'd like to see our thinking to really recommend a scenario, whether or not we want to call it dynamic or revisitation, that we're gonna learn so much from the data that should redirect, exactly the balancing. Maybe it'll be okay, but in all likelihood, I think we're gonna find, okay, some assumptions are correct and some are wrong.
but we don't.
Okay, I want to move us forward because it's late and we got a bunch to slow to cover. Go ahead, and then I'm gonna do one more on Zoom, and then we're gonna move.
Sorry, I have to say something, but, so will this be on top of the current congestion surcharge? And do you know where does the current congestion surcharge go?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It is on top of the existing surcharge. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it goes to the MTA, but I'm not 100% sure. And I don't know if it's subject to the restricted the black
number
box.
are we talking
So
about?
there is, in 2019, there was a congestion surcharge applied to yellow cabs.
Separate.
And yes, it is separate, but is it are there restrictions on that funding today? In terms of that being required to be used by the MTA?
I think it's supposed to be, but our previous governors used to raid the lockbox on a regular basis.
Okay.
That lockbox.
Yes. All right, Lee, we're gonna recognize you and then we're gonna move on to the next topic. I'm sorry, Scott.
Hi, thank you. Does anybody else not see the irony of the fact that congestion, as you and the MTA call it, really traffic, has been caused and exacerbated by the tens of thousands of for-hire vehicles, and yet they get to pay a de minimis amount, while those working middle class folks who live here in the residential neighborhood are forced to pay, if they have to use a car of their own because of disabilities, because of children, $5,000 more a year. It's bizarre. And how dare anybody with a place of privilege say that, well, only a few people within the residential area use a car or need to use a car to go about within the zone. You don't know how people have to use cars, especially those on the lower income level, working middle class, people who live paycheck to paycheck, to pick up their children, to go to the doctor, to visit family. And yet you're okay with them having to shoulder the burden, as opposed to the tens of thousands of black cars from Lyft and Uber who are behind this.
I appreciate the sentiment and the comment. Yes, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to the next topic. Scott, I'm sorry we didn't get to your question. We'll open the floor back up again for the next topics. Brenda, can you move on to the next slide, please? All right, toll crossing credits. Sorry, Larry, I know you were trying to get this before. And so the MTA included this in their presentation as well. So if for vehicles that are crossing into the CBD and have entered one of the tunnels or have come into the city through one of the tunnels listed on the screen there, they will receive a credit, so they will effectively receive a discounted toll in the amounts that are shown there, and there's different rates for cars, motorcycles, small trucks, and large trucks. And this only applies to the peak hours. There's no additional discount on the lower off-peak hours. Comments, feedbacks, but discussion from the committee on this proponent of the proposal. Larry.
This is the only aspect of the congestion tolling proposal that I had a problem with off the bat. Everything else, really, I'm reserving judgment on until we have some experience and we see how it shakes out, see how it alters people's driving habits. At the present time, there is toll shopping between the Queens Midtown Tunnel, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, Hugh Carey Tunnel, and the 3 free East River bridges. It's about $7 differential, and many people will wait in long traffic lines in order to save that money. This credit is intended to reduce the incentive to do that. But there's a well-known economist named Charles Komanoff who said that and suggested with his calculations that it really should be equal to the amount of the toll that's presently charged at those 2 tunnels, so as to take away that incentive and to spread out the traffic. And so that's why I hope that this matter gets revisited when we have the data.
Makes sense. Thank you. Anybody else with me? All right, again, opening up to the public. Scott, I see your hand, and I will give you the floor again. Please keep it specific to the topic of the tunnel crossing credits.
Thank you. That might be, so I just had a general question for the community board. I don't know if I can ask it now, if there's not a lot of questions on this particular slide.
Go with the question.
All right. So my assumption, and I'm new to attending the community board meetings. My assumption is that the community board is supposed to be kind of a sample of the community and represent the community. I was wondering, in your recommendation that you're going to be preparing to the MTA, if we could poll the community board members as to whether they live in the central business district and own a car.
I'm not gonna entertain that. I'm sorry. I don't.
Because it feels like it's not being representative of, it sounds like it's a very, everyone is for the congestion pricing toll, and that would be your recommendation.
We're not going to go and do a survey of each member of the committee or the board on terms of car ownership status. Thank you though for the comment. We're going to move on to the next. Is there anybody in person who has anything? Okay, we'll move on to Lee, please. You have the floor.
A moment.
You will have the floor. Sorry for that.
Okay, now he's ready.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. As for toll shopping, yes. Again, the MTA's plan, which you see here for credits, obviously they spent loads of money and loads of time with loads of professionals working on modeling. But as somebody who uses a car to visit family and take care of family outside New Jersey, I have to take the GW Bridge. Now, rather than taking the GW Bridge, for which there's no credit, I will take the Lincoln or Holland Tunnel so that I can get a credit. I will add to congestion in Midtown. I will now not just add to congestion, but pollutants, because I will now get stuck in traffic outside the Holland or the Lincoln Tunnel for an hour and a half to save the money, because I live paycheck to paycheck. So it's this system, this idea is silly. And what else is silly is using Charlie Komanoff as a chief economist. Is somebody who has hated cars, and that really is what's behind this, the hatred of cars. And we need to realize that this is ultimately created to get rid of people
I'm
who
gonna cut you
use
off. Sorry.
cars.
We're veering
Thank
off
you.
topic. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the feedback. You raised a good point on the toll shopping. I appreciate it. All right, moving on. We have Kevin. You have the floor. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi again. So with regard to toll shopping, what the gentleman was just saying, so if I'm going up to Westchester County, let's say it would be cheaper for me to come into the CBD district by taking the Ucary Tunnel or the Midtown Tunnel coming back into Manhattan, because I would only pay $5 as opposed to the 15. And then with Easy Pass, it's only $6.70 something cents to come through the tunnel. So I'm saving $3 and the change.
Sorry, I think you just to clarify, the numbers that are on the screen, this would be a reduction in the congestion pricing.
I see.
So
is the passenger vehicle $5 or it's $10?
No, so it's an offset. So if you pay the toll, the existing toll for the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, et cetera, and
Right.
then you cross into the central business district, you will receive a $5 discount off of the $15 toll for the congestion pricing. So you'd be subject to the full initial tunnel toll,
Which you pay already.
which you
You don't
are currently paying.
You don't get that credit if you're taking the tunnel or taking the bridge
That's correct.
from Westchester.
Correct. You only get the credit as it.
It only applies to the congestion charge.
Right, got you. So it'd be $5 off the 15, which would be $10 then plus the toll.
Right, but
Yes.
you wouldn't be gaining an advantage to take a route from Westchester to the tunnel. You would end up paying more money by paying the tunnel toll. That's you wouldn't be given an incentive to take a strange route in that way.
Right, yeah, just trying to figure it out. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next component. We're almost there. I think there's one or two more. Okay, next component here, we have accommodations
Who are
for.
the other people in this fucking room right now?
Next we have accommodations for low income drivers. There's two components here to discuss. There is a discount that is going to be applied to the toll. So vehicle owners with an income of less than $50,000 or those who receive SNAP, TANF, WIC benefits would be eligible for a 50% discount on the peak period tolls for their 11th trip and all trips after in a calendar month. So this is again, off of that base rate after on and after the 11th trip. And then additionally, there's a tax credit for individuals within the central business district who have an income of under $60,000, and they would be eligible for a credit for the full amount of their tolls paid.
The tax credit was part of the statute required.
Thank you, Larry. Comments, questions, feedback? B.
So I do have a problem that they're not exempting people who receive SNAP, WIC, or TANF, because those are people generally at the federal poverty level, and yet they're dealing with vehicle owners of less than $50,000. They're not even comparable. So I don't know if in the statute it says something about SNAP, WIC, and TANF, but those are programs that are generally offset when you're doing charging of fees. So I do have a question, and I can't answer it. I'd have to look at the legislation, or someone maybe can answer it from the Bridge and Tunnel Authority.
It's not in the statute. This is something that the Transportation Mobility Board came up with.
So B, is your concern is that you generally wouldn't have an income of that?
You wouldn't have an income of $50,000 if you're getting SNAP, WIC, or TANF. So
yes,
I don't know. You have to have federal poverty level income, and that depends on how many family members you have. But saying $50,000 and then $60,000 later on, you're talking about different magnitude of people. So I'm just concerned that we're now really dealing with people of the lower economic levels.
It's important though that they both apply, so you would both be eligible for that. So the difference is the tax credit is something you'd get back at the end of the year.
whereas the discount would be applied immediately for tolls, after the 11th and further toll, so,
But they're not exempting them specifically of SNAP, WIC, or TANF. I just think that there's not an understanding of those benefits. I just have a question about it.
good.
Okay, the rationale for the first item there is that what the lawmakers required was something that people would only be entitled to after having laid out the money for the full year. And there was a concern that the people who were the intended recipients of this benefit wouldn't be able to afford it. So the folks on the Transportation Mobility Board crafted the thing that you are saying doesn't make any sense. And maybe it makes no sense, but we'll have to.
I mean, these people are getting money to buy food, okay, with SNAP. So you have to kind of know where they are with these programs. I just think it's not realistic. And I would have major concerns.
Well, is ownership of a car exempted from consideration of their resources?
Yes, you do, for SSI purposes and SNAP purposes, because a car is considered to get you to, a lot of these people are disabled that are getting it because they have SSI disability or Title II Social Security disability. So there are disabilities, they have a need. An SSI and SNAP, I believe, I don't remember SNAP, but SSI, you exempt one car.
Yeah, I'm confused by your concern here. Is it just that it's duplicative or and unnecessary?
I think they should be exempt, period.
Yeah, but I think that's, yeah, not the $10, $150, then 50%, but zero.
So it's not that you have a recommendation for how to make this more equitable. You just say that it should be exempt, period.
Right, given what their income levels are.
Well, and Larry, to your point, that's in the statute. Can they be? Well, I suppose they could.
No, the first item is not required.
I understand. I follow. Okay.
And the people who came up with the proposal were trying to keep the exemptions to an absolute minimum, so that everybody's cost wasn't going to go up.
But unfortunately, they didn't take the lowest economic people.
Okay, thanks, B. All right, moving on, anybody, I see we have a hand raised on the Zoom, open it up to anybody else who has anything in the public, but we'll give the floor to Kevin, please.
Hi again, thanks for taking my questions. So with regard to the tax, residents of the Central District will, with an income under 60 grand, would receive an eligible tax credit for the amount of tolls paid. So let's say that's roughly in the 2,500 to 3 grand a year. Who's where would one, is it the state tax form or the city tax form?
The state tax.
The details exactly haven't been defined, and like there's no.
No, this is a credit on your state.
Yeah, it would be a
tax
state
return.
tax. Yeah.
This would be on the state tax, income tax return, and will there be a new line for this, or does anyone know?
There'll be a new tax form.
I mean, I think we can all speculate. They haven't released the exact details of claiming it, but yeah, it would be a state credit on your state taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item. No worries.
There we go.
All right, I think this is the last one. Okay, so exempt vehicles. Again, the MTA covered this, and Larry briefly mentioned this, but there's only 4 types of vehicles that are excluded in the proposal. We have emergency vehicles transporting people with disabilities, specialized government vehicles, and it specifically mentions specialized government vehicles that are not used for transportation, primarily to transport people. And then we have transit and commuter buses, all which would be exempt. Something important to note, the vehicles transporting people with disabilities isn't yet defined. There's a qualification that qualified vehicles transporting people with disabilities that still needs to be defined. So we don't know exactly what that means yet. We could make comments or recommendations about what we want that to mean.
In other words, if you have a New York State handicap plate,
it doesn't. That's not clear. If that's
no, but there could be additional exemptions like the hanging tags.
But
you'd have to prove it.
So is it accessorized too would be included?
So I think the answer is we don't know. We don't know what's going to be included under that category. Like the mobility board still has to come back with what they consider to be a qualified vehicle transporting people with disabilities.
Well, the mobility board is finished. It's gonna be the MTA and then their rulemaking.
Okay, that may be, I don't think that's. But yeah, we don't know the specifics of which vehicles would fit under that criteria. I think the other ones are a bit clearer, but that I appreciate is a bit of a vague area. Brock?
Just a question, I mean, with like taxis transporting people in wheelchairs, we just don't know yet, and I think that's an important detail to be worked out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, the taxis aren't being charged mobility charge.
Well, they have that 125 fee, so like, are they?
No, but that's being charged to the
collected?
passengers.
Yeah, they're collecting it.
Right, but Brock, was your point, like, should those passengers who are disabled in the taxi be subject?
No, they haven't been exempted, no. That's a question of whether they should change it, but since the MTA hasn't adopted their final rules,
But
it's still.
in theory, that may come out of their ruling. It's not clear from the lack of.
It's not included thus far. It's not.
Well,
what's
either
been
way,
recommended
it's not included thus far. To say that those would or would not be considered vehicles transporting people with disabilities. Yeah. All right, any comments, anything else from the board, from the committee? Or any comments on this from the public? I know I see Lee's hand on Zoom. I will give you the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to make 2 points about this. One, as somebody here just pointed out, there's a qualifier in vehicles transporting people with disabilities under the Act. If you have a New York State disability plaque or permit, or you have a hanging tag from New York City, a government agency has determined that you have a disability. This should not be up to any other legislation. You are disabled. And secondly, emergency vehicles. That does not include, for example, volunteer ambulance corps and their volunteers having to come into the district. For example, there's Hatsulla, which is on the east side and lower Manhattan, upper west side. Their volunteers, when they come in to go to their ambulance, are not exempt from paying the $15. That's a hardship to them. That will bankrupt them individually. And unless there's some type of exemption for those type of workers, you will see less volunteers coming and working those types of shifts and those types of services. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm actually pretty familiar with Hatsulla's operating model. I used to be a volunteer EMT myself, although not with Hatsulla. Many of their volunteers who drive, many but not all of their vehicles are certified emergency vehicles that have red lights and sirens that would qualify as a emergency vehicle, but not all. I do recognize. So yeah, do appreciate that comment. Comment, anything else? Okay. I think the next slide is just, committee discussion on recommendations. So that was a lot to get through. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. I will open the floor to discussion. If there's, from that discussion, is there anything, we have a couple of options. We can do absolutely nothing, and we have our previous resolution that supported the concept of tolling that we would stand. We could ask for changes to any of the things that have been included. We could support it as written. We could pass any other sort of motion that somebody wanted to make. So I'll leave it to the committee to discuss and potentially decide if there's anything that we would like to have as an outcome. From this point forward, I will not be recognizing the public. This is now going to be a committee discussion. Larry.
I want to put out for discussion a motion to support the recommendations of the Transportation Mobility Board to the MTA. While I have particular reservations that I've described over the course of this meeting, I don't think it would be helpful at this juncture, since we don't have data to push for anything specific. And so it would be a very simple resolution of support.
Do we have a second? We have a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Barack. All right, so we will move to a vote. Brendan, sorry.
So I don't think that we should do the motion until you hear what other people have to say. Because I had my hand up as well, and we can offer alternative recommendations as well.
My understanding of procedure here is that we have the motion, a
Yeah,
seconded
but
motion.
usually we ask if people have any comments before you go and shut off the discussion.
Okay, I would, okay, great. B, go ahead then, please.
Yeah,
Appreciate
so
that.
first of all, Jason, I want to thank you. I think the way the meeting was run was exceptional. The information that came in was exceptional. And that's what my comments are really for. I think as we discussed and even looked at the slides, we have a number of issues that we're looking at and we're asking, can we explain, is this the alternative or whatever? So I actually think, well, I support the concept. I think there's a lot of issues that still have to be resolved. It's the process and how you're getting there. And I actually think the public education needs to be enhanced as well. So I think implementation this spring is almost too early. And I would like to get a lot of clarifications on the issues that we had. So that's why I wouldn't support the resolution that Larry did, because I think there's unanswered questions. And I agree with Larry. We don't have the data. We won't know about a lot of it, but there really hasn't been a full public discussion.
I just have a comment. Along the same lines. I mean, I don't know why would we blindly support the proposal? I mean, there were tons of issues which were raised, and I think, and we represent the residents of this community, and there has been no specific consideration given to treating the residents who travel in and out, use their cars to actually alleviate, whether they are being any exemption has been considered for them. It's residents in general.
Well, the toll is intended to charge members.
I've heard that statement.
It's not a mistake that it.
No, of course I understand. I think everybody understands that the tolls are to raise revenue.
Well, no,
Right?
the tolls are to
And
reduce
to
congestion.
reduce congestion, right? And by the way, that hypothesis that the congestion would be reduced or not. But upfront, without conducting a pilot or anything, the residents are going to be impacted right away. The residents should be impacted the last. After a test is successful, after data is available, and then you could move. There could have been a sequential implementation as well, right? But I understand it's to reduce congestion, but the residents haven't been considered.
I'm gonna hold you guys. I'm gonna go to Gabe, and then we'll come back. We'll come back to the room. Go ahead, Gabe. Gabe, you still there?
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to take up too much time, but I think I would like a resolution that say we should remove the credits, because I think that's just a unnecessary distortion. I don't see what value that adds or what the justification is.
You're referring to the tolling, the tunnel credits?
Yeah, for differential ingresses. Yeah.
How would that work?
Well, just remove it. All right.
So you want to have a $7 differential between coming in via the Midtown Tunnel versus a free bridge, as contrasted to a $2 differential. Which is what this proposal will create, instead of it being all even. My point was that it ought to be even, that there shouldn't be any benefit in taking a free bridge. They didn't quite get there. And I'm not sure I understand if you're saying the same thing or the opposite.
No, I think, Larry, you summarized my point better than I did. I would like to see all the distortionary effects removed of differential pricing. So I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, so just so that I understand, there is the suggestion that
he wants to offer an amendment to my resolution.
But what is this? Gabe, is your recommendation that we would implement the credit on the George Washington Bridge and other
No,
crossing
no, no,
points?
no, no, he's saying that the amount should make it even, so basically it would be, no reason to, do, toll shopping.
Okay.
The George Washington Bridge is an anomaly.
Okay, got it, okay, hold that thought, before we finish discussion, and then, we could.
And if he wants to make a motion to amend.
Although, in the
I would
interest of,
second that, yeah.
in the interest of time, I withdraw.
Okay,
thank you. Good.
I just want to briefly circle back to what was said earlier about those people who are eligible for a SNAP, WIC, TANF, and so forth. I agree with B that it would represent intuitively a tremendous hardship as opposed to many other people, and I would appreciate if we pulled that piece out to indicate that that's something worthy of reconsideration.
but do we know how many people that would impact and what the economic effect of that would be? That's why I'm reluctant to suggest that at this point without data.
I'll also bring up, like, I think just my personal viewpoint on this, there's a lot of things that I personally would like to see better about the proposal. I think there's a lot of individual details we could pick and point at, and it's gonna be extremely hard for us to reach any sort of consensus on what the ideal version of this bill is, as I'm sure the Transportation Mobility Board struggled with in coming up with this recommendation. So again, this is just my view, is that I think this is a solid proposal. I think it has flaws. I like it as it is currently recommended overall. And I think in order for us to be able to succinctly come up with a recommendation, I think it would be best personally if we didn't try to point to specific things that we didn't like and we did like, and we generally focused it in
Here for.
more specifically. I'm not saying that we can't do that, that's just my take. Right.
Yeah, so there was a 4,000-page environmental review. I mean, this is the most extensively studied legislation maybe that I know of ever.
I tried going through that last night.
Ever. And this, to think about the residents in this neighborhood, we're 85% car free. And we have the worst traffic of any community board in the entire city. Anything in the Bronx, not CB5, not CB4, not anything, it's us. So we have very small number of people with car ownership and massive amounts of congestion. So I know everybody wants an exemption and this and that, but I think we should just, I agree with Jason and Larry and people at this committee, we should just approve it as is. And realizing that we got to collect data and there's going to need tweaks down the road.
So I'm willing to.
I think there's an alternative. We don't have to say anything. I mean, I think there's the community, we've heard from a number of the community. I think there are all these unanswered questions. We could leave it as it is and have all these hearings and see if modifications are made. So there is an alternative as opposed to staking something out that a number of people still have questions about.
Yeah, and I'll also point out to that effect, all of the comments and concerns that were raised here by everybody should submit those comments individually to the MTA for feedback and for consideration in the final proposal. Larry, go ahead.
Okay, in the course of doing this environmental assessment through the scoping process and in response to the draft document, questions from the public were solicited. And I made a number of comments which were responded to and in writing by the people who were responsible for this environmental assessment. And I think that the members of the public who didn't avail themselves of the years of outreach, including an extended period where people from the entire Northeast, from Philadelphia up to New Haven, I think were asked to weigh in, or being disingenuous that they had no opportunity to be heard. And right now, we're in a similar kind of a situation. As Jason said, individuals have the opportunity right now to submit their comments to the MTA, whatever they want the MTA to do that's different, whether they want to have something done differently with the George Washington Bridge, or with, as I was talking about, having the offset for the tolls equal, so that there's no differential between free and toll tunnel and bridges. We have the opportunity still to make more comments. And I've made comments so far. I may make additional comments before the period is over. But I think as a community board, and since the MTA was looking to us to make some sort of a statement with regard to all of this work, I think that the idea of a simple, thanking them for all their hard work, and this is a pretty good thing to start with, and we look forward to the data in the future.
I'll propose not make a motion, but propose a suggestion for a tweak to your motion, which would be to say to encourage we would support the proposal and encourage the MTA to consider continue to solicit the feedback during the comment period from individuals, and recognizing that there are still concerns that people have broadly in the commenting period. It would be a nod to allowing for.
I think that's separate from what we're doing as a board.
That's fair.
So I think we need to look at this as an opportunity to kind of put forth some of the challenges and some of the questions, and say, we don't necessarily have to go into too much detail, but we can say that there might be an opportunity to look at residential exemptions or some sort of equivalent, or some sort of, the disability thing, I think is certainly worth mentioning, the income levels, but there's opportunities to improve certain aspects of it. I don't know that we have to go into a ton of details and say, it should be this price or it should be that price, but I think that we've heard enough feedback, and it's clear and consistent from the community that they're looking to us as to lead the way on, questioning the values here as far as.
I think we'd have to vote on each alternative suggestion.
Do you have a specific proposal to what you would?
I mean, I would just list it out as, we see opportunities to relook at a couple of these things. We don't necessarily have to shed light on what they should be. We're not the experts here.
Well, again, I'll focus this on.
That's a very different approach.
We would be, if you have us like right now, because we have a proposal on a resolution. Do you have specific elements you want to see in that motion?
Can you write them down?
I mean, I think based off of what we heard tonight, and it doesn't necessarily represent my point of view personally, but we heard that the residents don't feel that they're being given a clear voice here. That all we're hearing about is commuters and the like, whereas there hasn't necessarily been an acknowledgement of, anything for residents, whether it be a tax credit, whether it be, anything other than some of the income levels. I think that's just one of the things that's missing here from this proposal. But I know we're short on time. I know.
I heard something different. I heard that there are a lot of aggrieved people who do not want to pay this, period.
Yeah.
No, I didn't hear that. I heard people living in whether we call it residential or not, who feel that they pay and contribute to the city, and that they're being singled out, and that they're not being considered. I also am concerned about small businesses, and I am concerned about the real estate that exists here, and the rentals and stuff, and the restaurants that exist. So I do agree there was a long time, Larry. I tried to read some of this, but I am not as schooled as you are. But I think the questions that you have are really general questions, and I think the community is looking to us to say that there are still issues that need to be resolved. I don't think any one of us would say that this is something complete.
I don't disagree with you, B. But I'm saying that this is something that would, with data, be more informed than the suggestions that people are coming up with.
And that we could refine it.
if there are changes that are necessary, we can make recommendations for later changes once we understand the impact of it.
Because I'm sure there will be real concerns. You're raising some right now, and we'll have data to support them, and then could make a future recommendation for changes to the program.
You guys have both made your points. I appreciate it. Brock, you have one thing, and then I'll come back.
Just we're talking about exemptions. I think there was well over 100 asks for different exemptions. Family members of police wanted exemptions and this and that. We have to be very careful because that's going to really raise the cost for everybody else. So be very careful about wanting more and more exemptions.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Being new here, it's a general question. For technical matters like this, do we always need to have data to opine? Or do we convey the issues qualitatively as well? That, these issues were enough and, there was uncertainty around these issues, that it should be considered.
We don't necessarily have to back our recommendation with data. That's helpful, I suppose, but that's not a requirement by any means.
Okay. Yeah, I think what Larry was saying, and I agree, is that we're going to learn so much from the data. And that my only suggestion would be that we would argue for transparency and flexibility on their part, whether it's 12 months or whatever period, to look and say, okay, here's really who's bearing the weight. Is this equitable? Period.
We could say we'd like them to come back and explain the data.
Yeah. So Larry, you're talking about 2 or 3 years before you see anything. You know that.
Yeah. That way we'll have a good idea of what the trends are.
Well, will it be 2 or 3 years? It sounds as though.
Well, there will be some earlier reports.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Say, we may only have a real sense of how this is working after that much time passes. But we'll get a lot of data before then.
Yeah, because you always bell curves, things start off slower and then they pick up as people get used to things. So you don't really have good data at the beginning of any of this.
Yeah, that's fair. But when you look at statistical significance. Sandy, I see your hand. I will give you the floor. People irrational.
I just want to say that we've already passed a resolution at the board that says we are generally in support. And we've heard a lot of comments tonight. So I think if we do want to do a new resolution, it really should address the concerns and any specific questions. And it doesn't seem like we have that tonight. I respect everyone's time. It's 9:30 and there's been a lot of debate. So if the committee does want to move forward, I suggest that you put together all your questions and concerns and do it, as a more robust kind of thing. That we've already stated that we are generally in support, but we have some concerns now. So maybe that's a way to move forward.
Yeah, just a note on that as well, that the comment period ends. We don't have another committee meeting to dive into this further, unfortunately. So we could still do that, absolutely. But we wouldn't be meeting the comment period window. So we could do nothing.
I'm not comfortable throwing everything in a garbage bucket and saying, this is what we collected at this meeting here. These are the concerns, without any kind of qualitative evaluation as to, what's a crank concern and what's a thing that really requires a lot of thought.
And so we could still have that. We could either pass no resolution tonight and still have that discussion about things that we would want to ask for as a result of the conversation tonight, even if it won't make that cut off of the comment period, or we could pass a resolution tonight and still do that as well.
Okay, well, I have the, I have the resolution.
Yeah, so I was gonna bring us back to that. So we do have a seconded motion from Larry on a motion to support.
I want to call, anybody want to call a question? We've had a robust debate.
Yeah, I'd like to move this to a vote, given that we have had a debate on the topic and we have a seconded motion. I think I would move to a vote.
Yep.
Yes, okay, great.
I have a.
Sorry, Ed.
Point of order.
Okay.
Actually, which is that my understanding is that a resolution cannot be passed by a committee unless it is according to the new bylaws, I'll let you weigh in on this, but unless it has been seen by the committee in advance.
So that would be that the resolution, and keep me honest here, that applies to full board, that the resolution has to be distributed to full board.
No, committee as well.
Unless it is a time sensitive matter and.
Yes.
Yeah, you do have the time sensitive matter aspect of it. But you do have the requirement that the committee see a draft of it and comment on it, as opposed to the language coming into it and being presented at full board, because you're gonna have the same discussion at full board. And that's gonna be a problem.
Well, we can draft something right here, as long as it's simple and everybody can look at it.
I don't think we should do that at 9:36.
But I'm saying that there's a time consideration.
Yeah, I will bring up, I think, perhaps a question. So just speaking my opinion, I support the resolution. I suspect if we pass this resolution, it's going to create a lot of debate that probably won't accomplish very much in full board, and I'm not confident it will pass in full board. So I will sort of question the value. I'm not saying, I will vote in support of the resolution. But I do have, I guess, a concern that will we be wasting a lot of gas in talking about it?
Well, basically, the resolution is gonna recite that there've been, 3,000 to 4,000 pages of environmental assessment, questions from the community that have been answered.
They haven't been answered, Larry. You heard the community.
No, within the context of the process that, where they solicited, questions and then they had to, answer categories of questions, and there were 88 of them.
Okay, so to address the point of order and the resolution we have on the floor, or the motion we have on the floor, I do think there are time sensitive considerations with this resolution or with this motion and resolution.
Because there's a cutoff date.
There's a cutoff date, and we were only able to get MTA to come and present in this meeting. We don't have another.
We don't have another bite at this to refine a good resolution that takes into account the things that our board chair was correct in pointing out.
So I do believe it would be appropriate for us to potentially pass a resolution, a motion and a resolution in favor of this, given the time considerations. I do think we should.
And the fact that we recite that we have been in favor of something very similar in the past. We've delved into.
I wouldn't go there, but I think we should put it to a vote and see if you have the vote. But I actually don't think you will pass it at the board, because there's all these issues and they're gonna come up. And I think Sandy is probably on target as to what will happen at our next meeting.
Sandy, I'll recognize you, and then I would like to move this to a vote.
Absolutely. And we have supported this, so I'm not sure passing a resolution in support is what the MTA is looking for. They're looking for very specific comments. And if we don't have those, I mean, maybe there's another way we can present those, but I think that's really what the time sensitive issue is what are the comments that have come forward from our community and from the board.
Okay, Sandy, I feel like I've been hit by a fire hose of information. And if I'm going to be drafting this resolution, and I don't see anybody volunteering, it would be helpful to be able to sort them out. And that's why I was uncomfortable with, taking a whole bucket of comments that, if you have numerically 30 different things that people said over the course of the meeting on this and that small aspect of the program, it dilutes the support.
Yeah.
I don't.
Good.
And I don't believe the MTA is looking for support. They're looking for comments. That's all I'm going to say. It's really, if the committee wants to go ahead and vote, please go ahead.
That wasn't my impression. I
Yeah,
thought they
I
were,
think they-
I thought they were really trying to get a sense of, does the district benefit or not?
I don't want to speak to what they intended, but I do think there would be benefit, again, my personal perspective, in sending a message if the whole board would support it, to say that, you know, we support this proposal. I do think that would go, that would accomplish something in delivering a message about the overall proposal and it may make a message on the strength of our support for it. Brendan, can we please move to a vote?
Yes. So when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. B. Disman.
Opposed.
Barack Friedman.
In favor.
Jason Fromowitz.
In favor.
Matt Roberts.
Opposed.
Larry Shire.
In favor.
Gabe Terzo.
In favor.
Jerry Weinstein.
In favor.
Haider Zaidi.
Opposed.
With 5 in favor and 3 opposed, this resolution passes.
All right, anything else on this topic before we move on, which will largely be closing the meeting out? Anyone?
Well, Colleen's report.
Is she still here?
Is she?
Oh my God.
No.
No, yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Okay, anything else to close this out? And if not, we'll move on quickly.
All right, two things, the older, new.
Okay, yeah, we'll do all the new business. I'll come back to that, okay. So, we don't have Colleen, which I believe is next on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, all right, so we don't have it, Colleen, I'm going to waive the chair's report. Now we have older new business. Does any member of the committee have older new business? Larry?
New business.
Yes.
I just want to mention that the city of Paris over the weekend passed a law that triples the parking rate for SUVs within the city limits.
Interesting.
The second thing is that 2 days ago, the Port Authority released for public comment a draft environmental impact statement for its proposed replacement of the Port Authority bus terminal. It would be replaced by a new bus terminal, which would have additional capacity, hopefully taking the intercity buses that we are being plagued with in our neighborhoods off the street. And although it's focused on the area right around the Port Authority bus terminal, I think we would incidentally benefit from it. There'll be a couple of skyscrapers built above the current 2 parts of the terminal that would help to pay for it. Construction of the bus terminal would take about 8 years and then 8 more years to build those skyscrapers. Bus operations would be continued basically on the surface out in the open. West of the terminal, there will be also a storage garage built.
Can we send the details out?
There is a 45-day comment period. The question is whether the community board wants to weigh in since we are somewhat adjacent to this location.
It's a valid question. I'll open up to committee. Do folks feel like this is something we should include in our next agenda topic? Personally, don't have a lot of opinions on the proposal, and I feel like the impacts to our community directly are it impacts us as residents of Manhattan, but fairly lightly. So I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts that want to see us talk about this, or strong opinions either way?
There should be community board meetings on the west side for those.
Yeah, which I would
There
imagine
will be.
there will be. Larry, let's take it offline. We can talk about it. Let's.
I just wanted to get a sense of the committee here, whether there's any enthusiasm. Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of other things. I'm not hurting for topics for next meeting, so we could talk about it if we want to get it on there. Okay.
But obviously individuals can make their comments. I've made mine.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay, if there is no other new business, do we have a motion to adjourn? New roll. No, I'm asking for a motion. Does anybody have a motion? Okay, if we don't have a motion, or objection, we will adjourn the meeting. And we are adjourned at 9:45 p.m.